I know you want to learn how to make a knife, don't you? So I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it. I've been making knives for quite a while now with just a few tools, basically just an angle grinder. So today we're going to try to do that, try to make a knife with very few tools, just using the absolute basics. And I'll explain it step by step. So this video is going to be a bit long, but watch it until the end because there will be a lot of cool tips here. And for sure, you'll be able to make your first knife if you follow them. So watch carefully. The first thing is to find a steel that we're going to use. You need to choose a good steel. There's no point in using those iron plates people use for welding. That won't work. I typically use this one, which we'll use today, which are TA blades, so we have several here. This one is a slightly bigger blade. And from them, I make the knives. I make almost all of them with it, but you can find other types of steel out there. So, this one, for example, can be used to make a slightly thinner knife. If you want a thicker knife, you can use a plow disc. Spring. Wanna see? I have a piece of car spring here. If I'm not mistaken, it's a Uno spring. It works. Any car spring works. Of course, if it's a coil spring, it'll be kind of hard to make the knife, but look for these flat springs. Plow disc. See that one up there? That works too. Pick good steel. Not sure which. What is it? Ask in the knife makers groups on Facebook and people will respond. There will be some picky people, but someone will answer you, right? Anyway, we've chosen our steel. The first thing we're going to do here is normalize this. I'm not going to normalize it now because I've already done it. But it's pretty simple. I'll leave the little video playing. And it's basically just heating up this steel and letting it cool down on its own. You can do this in a campfire at your house, make a big fire, throw a bunch of steel in there and normalize everything at once. That's how I do it. You can do it in a forge or inside a wood stove. Not sure, but somewhere very hot, and this steel will reach a similar temperature. The tempering temperature. It's gonna start changing color here. It's gonna start getting more reddish, red cherry. You take it out and let it cool down on its own in the air. Repeating this process increases your chances of success, but once is usually enough. Alright, now that you have your steel, you'll need to draw. What are you planning to make? You can do like I did with a knife a little while ago, which was to print the knife you want. This is an A3 sheet of paper. It fits most knives people make today. It's about the size of 2 standard sheets of paper. If it's a smaller knife, you can print it on a regular A4 sheet. Cut out the knife the way you want. Place it on top of the metal and trace it. Or if not, you can glue the paper here and spray some ink on it, then it will paint. Only where the knife isn't. This steel wouldn't work for this knife, see? It's a bit smaller than I want. But if you're making your first knife, maybe you don't want to follow the measurements so strictly. So, you can make a freehand drawing. The good thing about doing it that way is that it comes out really neat. This one here is that knife I cut out, so it really comes out neat. But you can make the drawing freehand. You just follow patterns like wanting to know or have something. I'll at least get the exact length measurement, so you go and take that length measurement. So, here we have a piece of steel. Look, it's 25 centimeters. I think I'm going to use all of it. I'll use the whole thing. I'll just follow some standards, like my hand. I want to have a really comfortable grip here, so you put your hand here. I'm going to do a freehand drawing, so I'm going to make it a little bigger than my hand here, just a little bigger. Here, look, this part here is where the knife handle will be, where it will be deeper to fit your hand, okay? And I'm going to draw here how I want this handle. It's a very simple handle. Be careful with this part here, see? This handle is too narrow. If you use a pencil, you can erase it by hand. Then you decide what you want to do and use to write, okay? Some people usually use, those things people use like a brush, right? They put that brush stuff up here. They scratch the surface with metal, turning it blue. Simply running metal over it leaves scratches. But if you want to do it by hand, you can. This drawing I'm making here is of MANIFACO, which is the knife from the channel, okay? If you don't want to make a knife and prefer to buy one, is this the one you want, or are there similar options? I sell them on Instagram, so follow me on Instagram at MANIFACO. And if you're interested, contact me there, okay? Don't ask about this in the comments. Selling knives on YouTube doesn't work. Use Instagram instead. You can contact me there and we can talk properly. It's interesting. If you're making your first knife, try to take advantage of the metal's natural edge a little. So you see here, look, this area down here and this one up here, I won't need to cut anything there. Why? Because I'm already taking advantage of the shape of the metal here, but if you have a very wide piece of metal or a crazy, weird shape here, you'll have to cut all the sides. No problem, you can cut it, but it'll be a little more work. So if you can take advantage of it like I did here, alright, you'll save yourself a lot of work, a lot of discs, especially for those who are just starting out. So, we have a blade like this. Let's go. Here, look, there's space for me to fit my hand. Alright, I have the whole blade here in front, a tip. I have a drop point here at the front. If I wanted, I wouldn't need to. Cut the tip here. Leaving it beveled like this would already make a nice knife. I suggest that when you do it, you get a picture from the internet of a knife you think is nice and draw on top of that knife. Try to copy the drawing, or if you can, print and place it on top. Because sometimes when we try to draw freehand like this, we end up making a kind of weird drawing. I'll admit, I've made some pretty weird knife drawings. And over time, you'll lose that bad habit of drawing ugly like this knife. Not that this one turned out extremely beautiful, but there are some things that are important, like this angle here, this curve up front. If it's too small, the knife looks really weird. And if it's too long, it looks like a pointer, a sword, I don't know. So these little details you learn with time. So to avoid these mistakes, you just take a ready-made model, one that's already nice, and draw from it. Be careful not to leave any sharp edges, not here and not here, so you don't hurt yourself when you're using the knife. We've already drawn it, so you don't need to draw the edge, hole, or anything else, since this line will disappear. When you're working, let's move on to cutting. You're going to need something to hold your blade in place. Wherever you work, bench, table, or elsewhere, it must be sturdy. It doesn't work to hold the knife with one hand and use the other to cut, okay? Stay away from that. Please don't do that, it's very dangerous, so you need to learn. I'm currently using this thing here, which is girly. It's a girl, she has it. This ball up here allows me to move it in all directions, so I can put it in this lying down position. But you can use a clamp, for example, a clamp like this. You buy a clamp like this one. You can make endless knives with it, okay? And this, you attach it to the table and it can hold things. I used that for a long time, it works well. And I still use it sometimes depending on the knife. You can't attach it very well here, but anyway, what you're going to do is this. Attach your knife in this position, not with the knife standing up. I have a clamp, just a standard clamp, with this jaw facing up. It works. No, it won't work, no. You can't see this line clearly unless you look from the side, so you need to stay lying down. If you only have the girl, get a sergeant like this one. It's not very expensive. I think I paid 35 reais if I'm not mistaken. And for this girl here, I paid 100 reais for her. I've seen some people do it on a wooden block. They do it like this. Put the knife here, take a little wooden wedge like this, and hammer a nail on each side. Really tight, then it gets pretty firm. You can work with it, but it's not as good as a girl. And you're taking more risks. So, the best thing is to use a clamp like this, or a girl if you can't. Do the first test with this one, but be very careful, okay? And don't say it was me who told you to do it, because I don't support this idea. Alright, is it secure now that it's attached? We have to put on the cutting disc. The cutting disc is this really thin one here. Don't buy the thicker one, because you'll have to work a lot harder. The metal needs to be very thin to cut it, okay? This brand here isn't very good for cutting discs. I suggest some others. There are better discs, like Star Stanley. There are some good brands of cutting discs out there. Try using whatever you find there, okay? Then place it here with the written side facing back. Then you go and tighten it. It's very important here that you don't remove these guards from the grinder. This is going to be very useful for us when we're working with knives. It'll protect you a lot from sparks. And this right here gives you a lot of precision, okay? Having this handle here allows you to make much more precise cuts, so don't remove it from the grinder. Leave both the guard and the handle on. Don't remove them, okay? It's for our protection.
Here's what I'll use. First, the leather apron.
If you don't have one, that's fine. You can make your first knife without it, but you run a big risk of ruining your clothes or even getting hurt. So, try to put something thicker in front of you. And there's something else I've started using recently that works really well. Especially if you're going to make a lot of knives, this will make a big difference. It's a pair of pants, see? I cut off the front part of the pants, left only the back part, and I put it on my arms. What is this for? To protect your arms from the sparks? A lot of sparks fly when you're cutting steel, and at night, if you've been cutting steel all day. Your arm right here, look. When you run your hand over it, you'll feel like there's a bunch of steel splinters stuck in your arm. That's really annoying, okay? And I think that just long-sleeved leather gloves aren't enough. I have one here, for example. This one, look, and this sleeve length here isn't enough. Sparks hit your whole arm, and buying a glove that covers it all isn't cheap, is it? Grab an old pair of pants that no one wears anymore. And cut it. Look, it fits perfectly. Leftovers in the back aren't a problem. The important thing is to protect yourself here in the front. Then you'll need a few more things that will protect you as well. I suggest you use a gas mask, which is one of these filter masks here, see? These here offer a bit more protection, but they're a little more expensive. So, if you want to start, you can start with a simpler mask. For this knife, I'll use this mask, but I usually don't wear it since I need to talk to you all sometimes. That mask takes time to put on and remove, but this one offers some initial protection. You can buy those other personal protective equipment masks, even the ones you get at hardware stores. Even if you're just going to buy the disc, you should get an important mask and never work without it. Otherwise, your lungs will fill up with iron. And that's not good at all. Not later on. Another essential item is earplugs. This one here costs about our $1.50. It's cheap, lasts long, and available at hardware stores. You use this one, right? It will really protect your hearing. In the beginning, I worked a few days without this. Eventually, you can't hear anything, which is very bad over time. So, don't work with a grinder without earplugs. It really makes a lot of noise. And you'll also need gloves, leather gloves. Over time, you'll get an idea of how it drills, where the sparks hit, because this would happen to your hand if you weren't wearing gloves, so use them. You don't always need to wear both at the same time. You only need to wear the glove on the hand that's holding the grinder. So, one of your hands goes here, and the other hand goes here on the motor. The hand that's on the motor, you wear a glove. The top one, you don't. Why? This one protects you, so sparks won't fly onto your hand. It's not a problem. And if you don't wear a glove, you'll have more precision in the cut. You can use it on both hands, yes, but I usually only use it on the hand that's underneath here. So when you're cutting, you use the grinder in this position, and your right hand goes on the grinder. When you're grinding, sometimes your left hand is on the motor. When that happens, then you go and put the glove on your left hand, but it will depend on the situation. This knife here, you can see that it has this recess here on the handle. If you want to avoid problems, you can start by just making cuts in this direction, several, close to each other, and then start removing them. But if you want to do it directly, since here we have a flat handle, you can make a straight cut here. One on each side, but don't go past here at most, because you might end up going a little too far and cutting what wasn't supposed to be cut. So you always take off less than you actually need to, because you can always take off a little more later, but you can't put it back. So you make the cut here, up to just a little bit before, and also a little before the end, and then you take off that last little bit. Or you can make several small cuts and then trim each one of them. That's up to you. Let's do it so you can see how it is. It's important when you're making this cut that you don't put too much pressure on the grinder here, because this disc is thin and it can break. That's another reason why it's important to keep the guard here. So, take it easy. Don't press too hard here because this disc is fragile and you'll also wear out the disc much faster. Don't press too hard. Cutting discs aren't designed for excessive pressure. Now I've already removed this core and I'm slowly coming here and removing each of these edges. I'm not supposed to leave this smooth here using this thin disc. It's just for me to remove the excess. Afterwards, we'll do the finishing on the ends that will stay here. And then that's about how you should look. It's normal for little ends to stick out. That's how it's meant to be. The back will be rounded. But I'm not going to try to make that curve with the cutting disc. I'm just going to make a straight cut and then I'll bend this here. Later on, with the specific tool for that, we'll get to it. Now let's turn the knife over and do the front part. If you like these tips, please subscribe to the channel. There's a complete playlist there talking about how to make a knife step by step. Each of the processes is done separately. If you have a specific question, like how to glue a handle, just search there. Next, look up how to glue a handle on the front on YouTube, MANIFAKO, and then you'll find a tutorial of mine teaching how to do this knife process. There are a lot of cool tutorials here. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Done. The knife is cut out everywhere. We've already removed all the excess material from it. But it still has all these edges sticking out everywhere, so it's not very well rounded yet. We'll fix that with a grinding disc. For that, I always have two grinding discs. One that's already more worn out. Look, it was really used for grinding. So it has a thinner edge, and the other one is basically new. I've used it, but its edge isn't thin. It's still pretty rounded here on the edges. I use this one to do some corners, like if I'm going to do this corner, I use this thicker disc here. Look, why? If I use this tip, I won't get a neat finish inside, right? Sometimes I can make this movement and do the finishing, but it doesn't always work. So it's good for you to have a thicker disc like this, so you can get into these rounded spots, so you can use the disc in this position. But when I'm here, for example, I want to use the disc flat. So I use a thinner disc and make this movement. If I make this movement with the thicker disc, I'll leave it like this, it'll end up thin as well. I usually keep this disc just for that. Just for me to do the more rounded finishes. And with this one, I do all the rest.
Especially in these corners, like inside the handle, in harder to reach places, when you have a round hole like this inside the knife and you need to get in there.
You're going to use this rounded disc here. It's the disc down here with a raised surface. The straight disc or the cutting disc doesn't work for this finishing. No, you can't use those because you'll risk breaking it. So, to put it here on the grinder, we have to attach it. I'm going to start with this rounded one. We're going to do the corners there. I attach it normally, with this part facing inward, this hole facing up. And here, instead of the nut going in this position, it's going to be turned the other way around. See? The bottom of it faces up and the higher part faces down, because it's going to fit inside this hole and give more stability to the disc. So screw it in like this. So here, what I'm going to do is use the grinder in this position, not dragging it. I'll use it facing forward to make this curve. If you look from this position, it looks pretty good. It seems like we managed to grind it properly. But if I turn to this position, you'll see that there's still a little scratch here. That happened when I used the thinner cutting disc. It ended up going a little too far. You can't leave any of these scratches there. You have to remove all of them. Because these scratches that are left, these little cuts from the cutting disc that went a bit too far, they'll end up creating weak points on the knife where it could break in the future. So, I need to grind this down deeper and remove all the scratches left by the cutting disc. There's another one here too. It's harder to see, but it's there. So you have to remove everything. You can't leave any of these little cuts exposed here. No. Besides looking bad, it damages your knife. Alright, now it looks nice. I managed to finish this part here. I had forgotten to make this groove here, look, in the knife's design. So, I already made it here too, with the grinding disc, these finger grooves like this. You have to be careful not to make it too deep, because it looks kind of weird and it also gets uncomfortable on the knife. So, try to make it really light, unless the model really requires it to be that way.
But generally avoid making it too deep.
over the corner here. See where it goes up? I'm going to make a half moon here. Then you get here and there's a point. This is going to hurt you, so try to make things smoother. And here, look, we're going to have a little notch. That's to make it easier when sharpening. If you, for example, on a knife like this, sharpen all the way up to here, look, you run the risk of running your finger over this little point and cutting yourself. If this part was sharp, you could cut your finger here. We'll only start sharpening from this point onward. There are some knives where he simply only does this part, the file guide, and does the grinding over there and leaves this part. But there are others that have a groove here. We're going to make this indentation with this disc as well. You see that it has a rounded tip, so it's going to give a nice result here. You can also do it with a round file. That works too, but it's more effort, right? Alright, I finished what needed to be done with this rounded disc. Now I'm going to switch and put on the one with the finer tip. Just a reminder guys, this one with the finer tip was just like the other one when it was new. It ended up like this because I wore it down. So, when you buy them, you'll buy two identical discs, but you use one for one purpose and the other for something else. Now we're going to do the rest of the details and then the grinding with this disc here. Here's a tip so you don't burn yourself when taking out the knife. Hold it with pliers, it works really well too. Now let's round off this part here at the back and also here where we have the finger groove up here on the top. And we can already make some adjustments here, but there's not much to adjust here because it's actually flat. The cutting disc makes everything very flat. For this one I need to change the glove. I was using the glove on my left hand, now I'm going to use the glove on my right hand because the grinder is going to change position. Now I'm going to hold it like this. Before I was holding it like this to cut. Now to grind I change the position. The right hand is the one that's going to use more force, so I put it here so I can push. When I wanted to cut, I used more force with my left hand at the top, making the movement so my right hand was on top. The right hand is always on the side that uses more force. Now we do rough shaping like this. Enzanato. Now we're going to make the marking here for the rough shaping. To make it perfect, you can use a caliper, one of those cheap calipers like this one. I don't even remember how much I paid for it. I've had it for many years. And you set here the thickness you want your wire and make the mark. The important thing is that it shouldn't be something too small. I'm going to do a rough cut like this. It's just going to be a small rough cut like this. If by any chance you're going to make a very thin knife, like that brush cutter blade material I showed at the beginning, it's really narrow. It must be about 2 millimeters or so. Then alright, you can do a grind like this. If you're working with thicker steel like this one, about 4 or 5 mm, I'm not sure exactly, you'll have to do a longer grind because otherwise the edge will be too steep like this and it won't cut very well. So try to make it a little thicker. I'll do it like this. See this amount? I think it's good. In this case, 18 mm. That's the amount. You can lower it slightly and set 17 here. 17 millimeter, okay. I'll lock the caliper and I'll mark it with it. I don't have a caliper, but I still want to do it this way. No problem, just mark it by eye, try to do it right, take a look, see if it looks good, but do it, make a mark first. Then I go in with the pencil and draw over what I did with the caliper, because this one here I did with the caliper. A wind from the grinder will blow through, making it impossible to see anything afterward. But the pencil holds up a little better. And here the grinding will come up to this part here, right here, where we made the deepening here on the blade. Alright, the same thing on the other side. I'm going to mark the other side right away because I might end up moving the caliper and changing its thickness, and then I won't be able to make both sides the same. So, I'm going to mark the other side right away, so it's already done here. A grind this thick here will be really interesting. For a knife edge, it'll be able to cut a lot. If you want to make a stronger edge, you can go a little lower. But like I said, it will also cut less. To do the grinding, I'll use the angle grinder. In this position here, I'll rest it against my stomach with its handle and I'll press it. You can't do it too flat or too upright. If you do it too upright, you risk going straight through and damaging your blade. You'll need to cut outside here to redo it, making the knife narrower and ruining your work. So do it while mostly lying down here. Keep making this movement, go patiently, because it usually takes a while. For beginners, roughing takes much longer, but you'll get the hang of it later. You'll be able to apply more pressure here, press a little harder, and you'll be able to do it a bit faster. Then you do a little bit here, keep going, you do a little and check here. See if it's in the center. A good tip for knowing if it's right in the center is to mark it beforehand. You rest your knife on the table and use a pencil to make a precise mark. The center is right here, because then when you're getting there, you'll be able to see that it's time to stop. So let's do that. Let's trim it down. Remember, it can't be too rounded either. Like this, kind of curved like this, and not inward either. Of course, there are some types of trimming that have a kind of inward shape like this, but in this case, we're going to do a flat trim. So you have to trim it in a flat way, straight. If you tap here and place a ruler on top, it won't be crooked or wobble. That's it, you will! Shave off a little bit and take a look. See where you need to remove more and then keep going. That's how it works. You'll get faster over time. On one side, it's already done. It didn't take long, but that's it. The first time you do it, it'll probably take a little longer. Take your time. The important thing is to get it right. Here, it can't go past the center. It has to be a little before the middle here. Knife thickness is important, and it must also be flat, which is common. People are doing this here, and they end up rounding this edge a lot, and it gets bulged here in the middle. It gets rounded. That's not good. It has to be really flat. That way the cut with the knife will be better. So, alright, this part looks good. It's important for this to be just right too. You can fix this later, even better. With the file it gets much more perfect. First, use the grinder properly, then do the same on the other side in the same position. Marking is crucial. The marks must align perfectly and you should never go past them. Always stop just before the mark when using the grinder. Now I'll flip it and repeat the process on the other side. Now that I've already ground both sides, I'm going to finish up the grinding. For that, we won't use the grinding disc anymore, we'll use the sanding disc. You can use the flat disc, it works too, but I recommend this one, which is the rubber disc with a sanding disc. Grit 36. So I put it right here. It's good for you to buy this rubber disc, which has this metal ring here on the back, this metal ring, because otherwise this can heat up and melt and ruin your disc. And usually they're more durable too. And 36 grit on a newer sandpaper, put it here. And you have to use the proper washer for this here. The right nut for the rubber disc. Don't put the grinder's guard here. That's not what it's for. This nut is not meant to be used with a rubber disc. This one you can tighten directly like this. Look. Done. If you did it right, it should look something like this. You can see that it's pretty flat, and here you can see there's some thickness here. If I run my hand over it, I won't cut myself. It's very important to have this thickness here, because if you don't, when you heat it up to temper it, you might burn your edge. So you can't leave this at the point where it's already cutting you, right? You need to have almost a millimeter of thickness here so you can safely temper it later, and not to mention, you won't risk burning it. Because sometimes when you grind too much here, you end up going too far and bending the edge to the other side. Or you make a hole here and you lose an entire line of the edge here. So you have to be careful with that. You'll remove that little bit later when you're sharpening the blade at the end, not now, okay? So, now we're going to move on to the handle holes. For that, you can use several different pins made of aluminum, copper, or a bunch of other things. You can use gold pins if you want, but I have a cheaper suggestion everyone has. Known as a nail, it's made of iron and works very well as a pin. It's even stronger than aluminum, for example, so you can definitely use a nail as a pin. What I'm using here is a 15X-21, which uses this drill bit here to make the hole. How am I going to make this hole? You'll have to use a hand drill, right? Of course. If you don't have one, you can do it with a hand drill. I'll show you how to do it. So, you measure here and divide more or less where you want to put the pins, depending on how many pins you want. The important thing is that they're right in the middle here, well centered. When you put more pins in the knife, it usually looks nicer. But if you put too many pins, or here for example, put a bunch of pins, there will be an area here that will be weaker, so be careful with that. I'm going to put these 2 pins here. No need to measure exactly, it's already marked. The first thing we need to do is not drill, it's to mark with a punch. A punch is this tool here, which is a piece of steel. It's the same steel that's here. The difference is that I hardened it and didn't temper it. So it has a very tough tip and at the same time it's also quite brittle. But we're gonna mark here, make a little dent. I'll put it here and give it a tap with the hammer, because then the drill bit will have an easier time starting the hole. I could even start the hole without the punch. But there's a risk that the drill bit will slip to the side. You'll have a bit more difficulty starting the hole, so it's important to use a punch. If you don't have one, just be careful and you can do it too. You can see that it dented where the punch hit. You can't do this with a nail, it has to be with something else. A hardened steel, that's what you need to make that mark. Here, you can do it. Sharpen and harden a small steel strip, then use it. Now, the drill bit will fit perfectly right here. You'll put it in here and it will be easier to start. This drill bit will likely get dull. It happens. After making a few holes, the drill bit will get dull. So it's important that you sharpen it on the grinder. But let's try drilling first. To make the hole, it's important that you have a drill with adjustable speed. This one doesn't have it. I press here and it already starts at the highest speed. And even worse, it's here with the chuck loose, really loose. So all of this here are signs that we're going to have trouble drilling, but you can do it this way too. It's harder, but it works. What you'll have to do is secure the knife using the clamp. Secure it here to prevent spinning and injury. Now we're going to drill the hole. You need to keep the drill bit really straight. You support it and check the directions, see if it's straight, see if it's well aligned. Then you drill little by little. Don't use too much force. After you've drilled a little, it's important to put something on to try to cool your drill bit. Here, it wasn't very hot. In general, it's best to use something. What fluid should you use? There are many options online. Some people say it's pork fat. Some people say it's regular oil. Some say it's oil. Others say WD-40. There's no specific rule. A lot of people are using many different things and apparently they all work. Today we'll spray penetrating oil here to cool it down. After all, I spent time just getting it. The drill bit has cooled, but always keep penetrating oil handy. Drill a bit, then spray to cool the bit. Otherwise, it'll lose its temper and stop drilling. This drill can't spin in reverse, which is another issue. Still, it worked out. The first hole is done. Perfect. The important thing is that you have to do this with a really thin drill bit first. Don't use a drill bit much thicker than this, because otherwise you'll have a lot of trouble. You slowly use larger drill bits. You can already see the drill bit isn't working well. That's the point. We have to sharpen this drill bit. There's no avoiding it. Drill bits always get dull. And I'm going to take this opportunity to show you how to sharpen it. It's really simple. To sharpen your drill bit, you'll need a bench grinder and a small cup of water to cool your drill bit. So basically, what you need to do is check your drill bit here. It has a tip. See how it has an angle? You need to keep that angle. This side is the cutting side. When the drill bit is spinning, this is the part that will cut the steel. So this tip here needs to be higher than this back part. So basically, you're going to run this part on the grinder and then run this back part. So you'll grind more from the back than from the front. It has a slight slope. You can see it's there, though not much. What you have to be careful about is not making it too slanted. Like this here. So you can see this one here is already too pointy. This one on the left, so it won't cut properly anymore. You have to keep this angle and at the same time grind more here on the back part than on the front part. And you're going to make this movement here over at the grinder. Let's do it there so you can see it better. If you've sharpened it correctly, now the drill bit will be cutting properly. If it isn't, just repeat the process. Try to adjust the angle there and eventually you'll get it. The important thing is that you need to know how to sharpen the drill bit, because this drill bit doesn't last very long. Even the best brand gets dull and needs sharpening. There's no avoiding it. So far, this is our result. We got a pretty flat grind, the edge is nice and straight, the holes are well made, and the important thing is that the pin fits through the holes. Here's our pin, it goes through and there's not much play. A little bit of play is not a problem, you can fill it with glue, but it can't be too loose. If it is, you'll have to fill it with glue as well, so there isn't a hollow space left there. Now what's missing here is the heat treatment and the handle. We'll do that another day. I won't be able to do it here today. But over at my main workshop, where I have the proper tools for that, I'll show you how it's done. But if you've enjoyed the video so far, go ahead and leave a like on the video. This is very important, so I'm sharing this video here for free. So if you want to help out and support the projects here on the channel, you can get a knife like this one over on Instagram. Or if not. You can also click the blue Become a Member button below to directly support the channel. It's just a symbolic amount. It's not much, but for me, it makes a big difference. So, if you can become a member, you get the videos before everyone else. That's pretty cool. I send them to you directly in the Telegram group where we chat and answer questions. If you have questions about making knives, send them to me there and I'll answer. Become a member. It's going to be great. So, let's move on to the hardening part. To harden your knife, you'll need some device that can heat it up a lot. It doesn't work on a gas stove. It doesn't work if you heat it with things that don't have enough heat, that don't have sufficient heat. No, you can use a forge, or if you don't have one, you can use a barbecue grill, as long as you follow the same principle. You can see that inside the forge there's a pipe running through it. This pipe was once a wheelbarrow handle, and this is a hairdryer. You can make a very similar, very simple system inside a barbecue grill, for example. You just take a hairdryer, you place a pipe and air exits from its end. There, you put your charcoal and it will heat up a lot there. You need this airflow, otherwise you won't be able to heat it enough. So, for us to be able to temper the knife, you should use charcoal. Oh, but is there firewood up there? Yes, you can use firewood too, as long as you wait for it to turn into charcoal before you use it. Basically, that's how it is. Under your knife, there needs to be charcoal, finely crushed charcoal, no big pieces, so that it has the maximum possible contact with the blade and a good airflow so this charcoal gets really hot. Then you're going to place your knife there in position. Here, I only want to temper the edge, not the handle. which isn't necessary. I'm not going to take the handle and use it to cut anything. So I'm going to hold the knife at a slight angle here so the handle doesn't get too hot. It's okay if it heats up, but it's not necessary. And on top of it, I'm going to place a piece of firewood. In this case, I'll use this piece here and put it on top. This top piece of firewood is great. It really helps the knife heat up. Of course, you can put charcoal on top as well, no problem. I use firewood to save charcoal because I don't have much of it here. I never buy charcoal. We make all the charcoal for the forge ourselves using our ovens. But if you buy barbecue charcoal, if it's the kind that's really big, you can break it up a little. That will make it easier for us. It'll make it a bit easier for us to use it. If it's like this, smaller pieces are better. Everything's set up and organized. Now let's start the airflow to heat the knife. Now is when you have to be very careful not to overheat your knife. So you always have to keep lifting that piece of wood off the knife. And keep looking to see what color it is. It needs to be kind of a cherry red. It can't be too incandescent and not blue, for example. It needs to be emitting a little bit of light. If you're in the dark, for example, you'll see it giving off light. And another thing is the oil. You can use used oil, diesel oil, whatever you want to do the tempering. I'm tempering in water because it's a bit too complex. So at first don't start with that, no. Then the oil has to be preheated. You take any piece of metal like a rebar, heat it up and dip it into the oil to warm it up. It has to be at a temperature where you can put your finger in and you'll feel that it's warm. You have to take it out, but it won't burn your finger. That's about it. I'm already tempering some knives today. It's already heating up. You have to be careful not to heat it up too much. In here you have to make a circular motion so that the blade moves the oil inside and exchanges the heat faster. Be careful in this process not to temper the handle as well. Not that it's a problem, but there's no need to temper the handle. Don't put the knife in and pull it out of the oil quickly. You need to wait for it to exchange heat with the oil, then you take it out. Now we're going to put it somewhere so it can finish cooling down on its own. Sometimes the knife ends up bent after grinding, depending on the thickness of your metal or even the type of metal you're using. It might already be a little bent. You have to straighten the knife before hardening. If you're going to do that, I always do it here on the anvil. So I heat it up just like we did for hardening, and I put it here and hammer it so it gets nice and straight. If you don't have an anvil, use a railroad track or any metal object. As long as it's flat, you can straighten your knife before hardening it. There's already a video on the channel showing how to make this forge. I also taught how to make a fan forge, so if you want to harden your knives, you're well provided for. Just search for Manifaco Forge and all the forge videos I've made will show up. It's pretty simple. Do it right so the knife can be properly hardened. Now that it's cooled down, let's do the file test to see if our hardening worked. Do you hear that? Now I'll do it here where we didn't harden. You can see that even the file, it doesn't wear down the knife here, it just scratches, it can't remove any material from the knife here. So our tempering worked. I'll trim the edge a bit so it's easier to see during tempering. After tempering, the knife becomes kind of brittle. So if it's a thinner knife, this one I don't think so, but a thinner knife, or a narrower one as well. If it falls on a hard floor from a certain height, it could break. Now we're going to do a process that will try to make it less brittle. We're going to devitrify it. We're going to remove that glassy state from it. We're going to have to put it in the oven. It may take more or less time. There's no set time or temperature for everyone. It depends on the steel. Sometimes it's different, thicker or thinner. So that will depend on your situation. So how can you be sure it's time to take it out of the oven? Are you controlling it by its color? I'll leave a little chart with the colors here on the side. And you have to watch, keep looking closely, it will go through all these colors here. You can see it clearly here where we use the file. Once it's the right color, take it out of the oven, watch it closely. If it stays in the oven too long, your knife will lose its temper and become soft. It's not that it'll break because of that, but it'll lose its edge faster, so it's best to take it out at the right time. Let's do this. Let's take it to the electric oven, which is more precise, but if you want to use a gas oven, that works too. Anything that heats the blade and tries to keep the temperature more or less stable already helps. And you can already do this tempering. Let's go do it now. All the thermal processes are done. Now let's put on the handle. It's good for you to choose a good wood. Make sure it's a hardwood. I got these pieces from a sawmill that makes furniture. There they use hardwood, demolition wood. So they gave me a bunch of wood. I always use it for the handles. The important thing is to have a piece left over. So we're going to mark it here, and we mark a little extra. Some pieces are left over and can be used in the forge later. Okay, this one is the one we're going to cut out. We're only going to use this part. I cut one, then I mark the other and do the same. So, we're going to use a wood cutting disc for the grinder here, since we've been doing everything with this tool. This disc here, you might have a little trouble finding it. It's easy to find for marble saws, but for grinders. It took me a bit, but I think you can find it on Mercado Libre online. The good thing is it has no teeth. There's no risk of it getting stuck and punching you or cutting you or something like that. This disc is cool with a nice finish. I talk more about this disc and others in the disc guide tutorial that's here on the channel. In fact, there are several other tutorials there too. Go check it out. One important thing here is that we finish this part that's going to stay here. Let's suppose it's important that this part already has a bit of finishing, because later to do so, you run the risk of scratching the knife. It's very common for you to cut while sanding to damage the knife here, so it's important to do this finishing. A helpful tip is to use an orbital sander, just touch and sand. There's also a trick to doing this with an angle grinder. For that, we're going to change this disc now. We're going to use a sanding disc here with the rubber wheel. Then you decide what kind of finish you want. If you just want it flat, or if you want it rounded, or if you want it beveled. I'm going to make about a 45-degree angle here and leave a small gap down here. But of course, you can use another type of finish. It's up to you. Now, still using the same sandpaper we used before, we're going to remove some of this dirt that's here. This can get in the way and not stick properly. You have to be careful when doing this here so you don't go past the line where you're going to glue the handle. See? When I put the handle on top, it covered everything I sanded. It's okay if there's a little bit left here and I glue it just on this small part. If I had sanded up to here, it would look weird. Since we're making a simple knife and we're not going to polish or sand the blade part, it's important not to scratch the scale here. To drill, you can use the same drill bit you used to drill the steel, or you can use the nail that you'll use as a pin as well. That works too. It's your choice since wood is easy to drill. The important thing is that you have to position everything very well here and secure it to the table, because then there's no risk of it spinning on you. Position it here, and then you can also make a more precise hole, because if you drill separately, maybe you can do it. Sometimes the hole turns out a bit different or wider than the other. Then, when you go to put the cable in, the pins won't fit. One pin goes in and the other doesn't, then it gets complicated. You have to improvise quickly, because the glue is drying, so it's good to do it this way. That way you drill both at the same time, without moving the whole set here. Now put the two splints together. Remember, this part here has to be perfectly aligned with each other. Another thing that's good for you to check. Check if the surface you're going to glue here isn't dirty, because any dirt will interfere with the glue. The blade may stick to the dirt instead of the splint, causing the splint to come off. So it's always good to sand it a little, just to avoid the risk of losing the splint later. And also remove the dust. And if there's dust, it's the same thing. Now let's glue it then. To glue it, you can use any glue that is epoxy. I use this one, or epoxy, but there's the well-known Araldite, and there are some others too. I know this one works well, and Araldite too, so both of them work. The good thing about Araldite is that it's easier to find. Maybe in your city, at the store, you know, they might not have orb epoxy, but it's very likely they'll have it. Because this glue is pretty common. Yeah. But this one here is much cheaper, but that doesn't mean it's worse. It's good too, really good. In fact, there are a lot of people, professional cutlers, who've been doing this for a long time, who only use this glue here, so it's a glue that works.
It can be Araldite too.
There are some other glues that you can buy in a container like this, with a bunch inside, and they come out much cheaper. But I've heard that there are several that are bad, some that are good, but a lot of them are bad. You need to pick the one that's good and already trusted by others.
And also,
once you open it, it's good to use it within a few days, because otherwise it might lose its effectiveness. So I end up using this one here. If you're gonna make your first knife, use something like this too. Yeah. Here, that's another detail. I put glue on the knife, but I don't go all the way to the front of it. I leave a little edge at the beginning. Why is that? So I don't risk putting glue where I shouldn't. Then I go and put a little bit of glue here at the front of the handle, so it covers the part I didn't glue before. Don't put it on too thick either, otherwise it'll overflow. Then I put a little bit of glue on the pin inside the hole I made here. It fits really tight. If we do it this way, if it's with the drill bit, it gets a little looser, but it works too. This way works for hammering the pin, but we won't do it here because the wood is thick. You must set it to your desired thickness before hammering. I put it in place. Now I'm going to hammer the pins. Put a little bit of glue here on the top part of the pin where it will go in last. Don't use too much either, because all that glue won't go in there. And now on the other side, do the same thing. It's well attached. Check if there's an edge of the knife that's sticking out past the wood. If it is, you'll have to sand off that part later. Maybe you can fix it, so check that first. Now we're going to tighten a knife of this size. It's best if you use 2 pressure points or more. If you have a bunch of clamps, then the more the better. But if you only have one, just use that one. Just try to make the wood really straight, because if it's straighter, the chance of having gaps where the glue won't stick is very small. Now it's good for you to take a look here, because the glue is going to leak a little on this edge. So it's good for you to remove this glue before it dries. After it dries, you can remove it too, but there's a higher chance you'll scratch the knife. Let it dry with the blade facing up to prevent any leftover glue from dripping onto it. And in an hour, if you want to remove the clamp and use it for something else, you can. You can even start working on it in about an hour. But I recommend you leave it overnight. It doesn't hurt to let it dry from one day to the next, because that way it gets completely dry. Now that it's dry, we can trim it now. First, we're going to cut these pin tips and then trim it down. To do the trimming, we use this disc here, a rubber disc. I always put an older sandpaper here on the back, a finer grit too, and if it's coarser than the one on top, there might be a little bit left over. And it might scratch where you didn't want it to scratch. And a 24 grit sandpaper. If you use a slightly older sandpaper, there might be a little smoke, but that's not a problem. Use the sandpaper fully to avoid piling up unused sandpapers. No one wants half-used mediocre sandpaper. Just use it up completely. Now we're going to start by positioning it like this and removing this part on top, the back part and one of the sides. Position it. Like this, I use a regular vise, but instead of it facing this way, it's turned to the side. That way, I can work on the knife like this. It's good because it stays steady. A clamp vise is even better, but this way it's still steady. There you go, look, I've already removed it from one side and the top. Now it's back here as well. Now I'll flip it and repeat the process, removing it from this side too. What I really need to pay attention to is the thickness. Both sides need to have the same thickness. There isn't exactly a rule for what thickness the handle needs to have here. But generally, the rule is that the handle has to be taller than it is wide. So if you see that it's getting too square, meaning if this height here is the same as the width or close to it, you might need to take off a bit more on the scale. For comfort, it's better if it's a little thicker, but for aesthetics, people usually prefer it a bit thinner. So, turn it over and do the same process. It's not time to round it yet. Now is just the time to remove the excess. Leave the handle square for now. Ready? Now the handle is square. Then you'll decide what kind of finish you want to give it. You can just break the edges straight like this, it looks really nice, or you can round them off too. You can do whatever you want there depending on your finish. Sometimes it depends on the knife you're going to make. You're going to make some deeper spots, like here in this area or here. That's up to you. Here, we'll just round it off. I'm going to keep using the 24 grit sandpaper, but you have to be careful because it sands a lot. So you need to be careful not to go past where you need to. So just take off the edges, but don't leave the handle too square. Then after we round all of this out, we move on to the finishing touches. Be careful. With this part here, we've already done this finishing before, so we don't need to mess with it here. We're just going to round around it. This part is already done. All done. The shape of the handle is finished. You can see it looks nice, it has a good shape, and it's really comfortable in my hand. So after you finish this step, check to see if it's comfortable, if it feels good to hold, and make sure it's not too thick up here. Now we're going to move on to the finishing part. A lot of people do all this finishing by hand sanding. If you want to do it really well, you can. It turns out much better, it looks really nice. A lot of details. I use this here, which is a sanding wheel, 120 grit that goes on the drill. It gives a nice finish and saves time, since sanding by hand takes much longer. So, if you want to do this, it's really cheap and it lasts a long time. One of these sanding wheels can be used to make a lot of knives. Be careful not to touch this part while it's spinning to avoid the blade. We can sand all of this area. Another alternative is, before using this 120 grit, to use a slightly coarser grit, like an 80 or so. I believe it will help remove the scratches here from the 24 grit. The 120 grit also removes them, but maybe a few will remain because the difference in grit size is very big. So if you find a 60 grit, 80 grit or something like that, use it first and then use the 120. So your handle should look more or less like this. It's already super comfortable. If you want it like this already, you can go ahead and apply the oil to finish it now. But there's another very interesting step, which is the manual sanding that will remove the last little scratches and things that can take away a bit from the knife's appearance. These scratches here, these glue edges right here, like this, will be a bit harder to remove. With manual sanding, if you can do it, great. If you can't, that's okay. A rotary tool helps a lot, letting you reach corners with a small grinding stone. Remove these darker parts here. Manual sanding works too, though it's a bit harder. And what about the sandpaper grits? That will depend on the level of polishing you want to achieve. What you have to do is gradually increase the grit size. So, if we were at 120, move on to 150, then 220, 300, 2600, and so on. Don't jump from 120 to 2000 grit all at once. It won't work. And another tip is this little thing I'm using here, which is a nail file. They use it for finishing nails. It's soft, it already has a file, and it gives a really nice finish too. After the 120 grit, using this file here is really nice, but what can happen is that this little file here can wear out, it can get used up. So you just take another regular file, place it here, and use it just as support. It will work really well too. The important thing is that you have something soft to use with this file. This rule applies both to the handle and to the blade. If you're going to polish the blade or give it a satin finish, then if you have something soft, the finish might turn out more interesting. And now the final step here. For a simple blade without a finish, satin on the blade, which is the oiling part. There are several oils you can use on the handle: peroba oil, tongue oil, or it could be this one here, Singer oil, this one. I think this is the easiest to find. It's an oil that's often used in sewing machines, but why do we use oil? The oil, it will permeate the cord it will make the cord not absorb so much moisture. In other words, it will keep it from rotting. It won't get moldy, it won't have any damage. Over time, you can apply this same oil here on the blade if you want, or use a penetrating oil here on the blade. The important thing is to always have a thin layer of oil here on the blade so it doesn't rust, both on the blade and here on the handle as well. In this area, everything, including the pins, can rust, so be careful. So, because any carbon steel blade has the possibility of rusting, you can always maintain it with a light oil with a penetrating lubricant. And if by chance you wash this handle and some of the oil comes off, you just need to apply it again. Any oil like this or whatever you have there, so that it's always protected from moisture and keeps a slightly brighter color. Otherwise it ends up losing some of its color, some of the life of the wood. Now just let this dry a while. If you can, leave it for a day. If not, you can use it after a few hours. If you store it, the wood absorbs more oil. Did you enjoy this tutorial? Was it easy? Yes, you can make a good knife with just a few tools. Leave a like on the video, give us that support. If you want to support the channel as well, there's the Become a Member button, so you can help us make more videos like this. There's a complete playlist detailing each of the steps, each stage of making the knife separately. So if you're interested in going back to any part, you can watch it through this playlist. Or if not, that's fine too. Send this video to a knife maker or a friend who doubts you can make a knife with minimal tools. Prove it's possible. If possible, subscribe so you don't miss upcoming episodes. I'm Manifako. See you next episode. I'm out.